start.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael McClure, and this is KamalaDevi McClure, and we're going into the second part of our relationship deep dive upgrade call. And the first one was kind of an introduction to what we're doing. This is actually now the deeper questions that a lot of you have put in already to us. If you have any other questions that come up, probably best to put them in the text version, and we can see that here, the little text messages, so that we can look at those questions, we can analyze them, see where we can put them into the group.
Yeah, so there's a little button at the bottom called chat. You just want to type those questions there.
Yeah. And we'll be addressing several questions that we've already gotten, this past, several days, and going through those in some depth. We also let us know if you want us to use your name in it. Otherwise, we'll just treat it as an anonymous question. Okay. So
the bigger picture of what we're doing, Michael and I are in an extraordinary time in our life where, after making relationship a life study, we finally arrived and have sustainably arrived in the last almost 3 years to a place of it's like this exquisite place of harmony that both of us never knew actually was possible. And like, being that we're always growing, we're always making our own mistakes and wanting people to learn from them. We also want to contribute. We want to give that back to the world and support other people to get to this place so that they can do their purpose, so that they can do bigger, better things in the world than, having ongoing relationship issues and chasing their tail and arguing, or even just the resentments and the frictions. We want to have people really deeply, passionately in love and in peace. So that's what this is. It's like a passion project for us to be like, wow, let's give back. And then Michael really beautifully said, hey, the reason I want to do this course is because, we master things by teaching them. And if we offer this to the world, it's going to ensure that our own ongoing harmony and peace, which I think is, there's a lot of truth in that. So unlike a lot of the courses we've taught in the past, where it's like, we're teaching what we most need to learn, this is mostly like, hey, we've actually have something to give, and that's going to support our deepening mastery.
Yeah, and I really do look at it as the two prongs that KamalaDevi just talked about. We reach this harmony, and with that harmony, now we're able to do that much deeper work, the real deep relationship purpose stuff that actually has some influence on the world. And so that's kind of like the two snakes of Kundalini that are twisting together. I kind of look at them like that, and that harmony is within itself is a thing, and it's so powerful and important within ourselves first, and then within relationship, that I'm glad that KamalaDevi's talking about it as one of the things. We do have in the course, there's going to be conflict resolution and some other months that we talk about those things, but the whole thing is woven together on those basic premises.
And also, big picture, before we dive in, I'm looking at the beautiful faces on this call, and there's a number of you, in fact, most of you, who've done the level 1 of the spiritual shamanic sexual experience with
ISTA,
the International School of Temple Art, which I'm on faculty, and Michael's on the apprentice path. And that's a profound initiatory mystery school, which teaches this journey, this sovereign journey between sex and spirit, and how to really truly like awaken as individuals. And so level 1 is this personal journey. And then level 2, for those of you that have taken that next dive into another realm, because it's not just 1, 2, the other realm is actually transpersonal. So it brings us into hold on one second, I'm getting distracted by tech. Here we go. There. Now, this transpersonal is like about humanity, and it's about archetypes, and it's about the what's beyond, this personal realm, and really about our soul's dharma. And one of the things that Michael and I are realizing is this path of mastering the personal and then being able to go into the transpersonal and our soul's purpose is taking our lives to the next level. But there's not a journey that's like interpersonal. As an ISTA lead faculty, I'm like, I end up having to help people do 2 workshops, which is like they're doing this amazing work on their awakening, but then how do they bring it home and how do they relate to each other? And so many of the teachings that have been coming through for, what we're calling the deep dive are coming through my work in ISTA, working with couples, helping them integrate this deep spiritual awakening into partnership so that they can have enlightened relating and transcendental sex that's not just about the personal. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the inspiration for this as well.
Yeah. So, we got together about 17 years ago. Our Valentine's is our anniversary in a couple of days of 17 years. And I actually met KamalaDevi in that shamanic journeying. Shamanic journeying helped give messages to me that brought me to her. And the way I'm feeling it now, this past year, I've started to get those shamanic messages again that are taking me to that next level. So, initially 20 years ago, I was introduced to polyamory and to Tantra because of the shamanic work that I was doing. Now, this past year, I've started getting those hits of moving to that next level. And again, I think it has a lot to do with our interpersonal relationship. The fact that we have so much harmony, I'm able to kind of supercharge the work that I'm doing in that shamanic journey. And so that's the excitement, for me. And that's what we're, wanting to offer to others so that we can solidify our own understanding of why we have such harmony, why we're doing such deep journeying. By teaching it, letting others, have that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sweet. So on the question front, the way we thought we'd structure the Q&A is by giving you a big picture of what the deep dive year-long, progression looks like. So we're going to outline the curriculum, month by month. This is what we'll be teaching, and we'll try to answer questions that relate to those months so that you get like a bigger picture view, and then we can also kind of peek into those journeys with what's alive for you right now.
Mm-hmm. So the basic structure for the year is going to be a call where we talk about one of these 12 subjects, so each month. And then a week or 2 later, we'll have the Q&A call. So you'll get the homework or home play, as we like to call it, that you get to do in your couple in working on that subject. And then all the questions that are coming up, you can keep feeding those to us, in that week or 2 until we have the Q&A call. And then we go over them. And so you'll all get a chance to see how everybody is working on those. And you'll get to the questions that people ask are questions for the entire group, obviously, because we all are working on similar things. And we have that congealed community that's going to be there for it. So the 12 categories, the first one is assessment. Okay. So
it's really like the initiation of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And how to, we actually gave you kind of a preview of that in part 1. So you get a sense of that. But I do want to see if there's any question. I guess, additionally, we'll be using other assessments tools. So you're looking at the relationship and you're looking at your strengths, you're looking at your weaknesses and how to bring out the best in each other. That's
Mm-hmm.
what it's about.
Why don't we just say all of them, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper and give you some value on each of them. The second month will be communications. Okay. Third will be conflict resolution. I know we do have some questions about that.
Yeah, on communication, like the distinction is like, how do we communicate when we're in harmony, right? And then the following month is like, when we're not in harmony, how do we get through and back into resonance?
Exactly. And then spirituality, and that would be the practices that we have together, in our shared practices. And then intellectual, which is mostly about the agreements that we have in the relationship.
Well, there's also different, intellectual styles. And again, it's not so much just a category, but the compatibility between the two of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then emotional or romance, that's the fun one, one of the fun ones. And
fun for some and torturous for others, because in this category we also deal with our core wounding and some of our past pains and past programming, but all the emotional baggage that we bring to it. And the fun part is we're going to lighten up the load, let go, jettison some of the luggage.
Right. And it's not quite as fun as the next one, which is physical or sexuality, which hopefully is going to be the fun one.
Ditto. Like, I can't argue with that.
and then we're going to be talking about financial or money. A lot of the coaching, all of the coaching, when I first started in coaching, my coach was saying almost all of the work is about sex or money. So we're going to be, diving into those and all of the other things that relate to them.
And then my kind of meta coaching on that. Yes, sex and money are the places where we conflict, but actually all of the conflict is about our communication. It's about our deep understanding of each other's values. And sex and money may be the circumstances that are arising that, but the deeper and then the over how we handle it is really what makes harmony.
Yeah. And so many of the triggers in our culture are around sex and about money. So we'll be kind of digging into those and figuring out what's tying in with those as well. Then we'll be talking about family and tribe, which is, again, the community that we're going to be building here. We're going to be building kind of a model community of how you want your relationship to be, working with the family. So we're going to have that model here, and it will become part of your family as well. We're in hopes.
Also, too, typically in partnership, one partner tends to take up a pole, and it might be, for example, money. Like, perfect example, in our years together, Michael's the money man. Like, I make, I contribute and then hand it over to him, and he does the accounting and the taxes and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I don't have to deal with that. And that's codependent to some degree. Like, we're balancing that out. But socially, sometimes in relationship, one person's the one making all the social agreements, keep maintaining all the relationships, and the other person's doesn't have those as deep of social, but just comes along for the ride. Or maybe one person's more introverted and the other person's extroverted. But how to actually build tribe together that's healthy and balanced for the partnership, not just one person that represents both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously all of these things tie together as we get into the next month, which is going to be lifestyle. It's talking about that those very same things, which is, how we relate with each other, what our lifestyle, how we balance our lifestyles, together interpersonally. Okay.
So many people are like, hey, do you leave the towels on the floor, the toothpaste is, I like it rolled this way, or the toilet paper. And people argue about the dishes. I mean, we certainly have. And lifestyle's a lot like, how are you as roommates? How are you, morning person, night person, those kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm. And then we're 1 month, we're going to be talking about future orientation. And future orientation, yeah. And if you had anything you wanted to say about it, otherwise, the final month will be fun and commencement. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll have a graduation. And again, we don't really want to look at it, just like it's called commencement because it's actually kind of the beginning of a new path. So our hope is that this is kind of a runway, it's a 12-month runway into a beautiful place in your life where you can, take these tools and use them ongoing, forever. And the community, all the things that have been built, become part of that,
Yeah.
you know, airplane. Yeah.
So I have a vision. We have, you know, heart to heart looked at what are we really promising? What's the objective? And that commencement is after a year's worth of deep diving into all these really important parts of the relationship with community support. We want you to start a soul-based relationship where aspects of the personality, you know, and we include the personality. We're not like just transcending it. And it's like, but wanting to let go of the programming and the personality conflicts and the various like ego structures that keep us out of harmony. And as we crack and open and peel off layer after layer, by the end of the year, what you're commencing is a life that's oriented around your soul and a soul partnership that is, and whether it's, you know, you're in a soul tribe and you have other lovers, or it's, you know, that you're in the monogamous, it doesn't matter. It's that, hey, my center of gravity is in soul, and that's the level at which I'm relating, which is essentially why, you know, Michael and I have broken out of the conflict and into this new realm that's so really mystical. It's almost like it's like astounded us, because it's a magical, mystical thing to be relating beyond personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I had a metaphor. Yeah, when I was in Easton, Hawaii, I started getting visions of this shamanic work that I was doing, and it was a snake that was twisted together with the physical or sexual, and it was twisted together with the spiritual. And it unlike the Kundalini rising, you know, snakes that we see going together, it was actually three snakes going sideways. So it's kind of that life, you know, path. And that's kind of how I relate it too with the 12 subjects that we're going to be working on, is really getting those ingrained and entrenched into your life so that they can start twisting through the fabric of your life, the way that it is, the way that I'm perceiving it, you know, in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So should we jump into some questions, since this is a quick Q&A call?
Yeah, so we went through those topics because we'd like to say, hey, are there any questions, you know, around the assessment or the initiation? And so we'll go through these 12 categories or see as far as we get in this next half hour. Are there any questions, you know, first about like the relationship assessment? And you can unmute yourself if there are. Or did you have one that was sent in?
Oh, yeah, we have several that we've been looking at.
Mm-hmm.
How about,
should we go to, are they?
You want to do the one about the masculine, feminine?
Yeah, you know, since we have Ronya here, we had a morning chat with Ronya. Why don't we let her speak to it? Okay, so.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So you just want me to mention the question? Yeah. So the issue is, it's not just in the current partnership, but I had this issue in the last one as well, is that when my partner feels wounded, he goes into this place, like a really, really self-pitying, wounded place of just obsessing and obsessing and obsessing about what is wrong. And very much like I have been in the past, like years before, or how my like teenage girlfriends used to be and such, like just completely obsessed and stuck in the pattern of thinking about the issue instead of like hearing what I have to say or hearing solutions. And I find myself going into the world of the masculine and like trying to, okay, let's talk about this, I want to solve it, and so on and so forth. Because I tried, there was this issue 2 days ago, and I raised a topic, and my partner felt very triggered, and he kind of shut down. So I felt, oh, okay, yeah, he probably just needs some space. And so I gave him some space for a few hours, and then it turns out that he actually wanted me to communicate with him and check up on him and all that. And that's like, that's not what I'm used to men needing, you know? usually it's like, okay, he needs his cave, but now he wanted me to communicate and all that. And I just got like super confused, and especially considering that the subject I brought up was sensitive to me first, but then it was like all about him all of a sudden.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Vonya. What you're pointing at is some of the, and it's very clear because I know you're, deep on the personal growth path. You're a teacher yourself, and also for those of you that don't know, an extraordinarily masterful belly dancer and dance teacher. So like you're a very embodied person, and I know that you have been exposed to a lot of conventional wisdom that is out there about relationships, and you're pointing at it, right? So the pointing at, the masculine sometimes needs space in his cave, and the feminine wants to, let's talk about it. And this is valuable, for all of us. When we get into communication, we'll say, hey, these are, feminine principles, regardless of what gender you're in. Because in the case that you're giving us, you're saying, hey, my boyfriend's got this, and you're calling it wounded feminine qualities of, he's now pathologizing his emotions or obsessing, or and then masculine is, I can fix this, like I'm going to save the day. Like these are very, and I'm being melodramatic to point out the archetypes. And what we're doing in this deep dive is actually transconventional. And by transconventional, we say, yeah, those are feminine and those are masculine archetypes, but we're going beyond that. We're going to, not only we all have both, but the deep responsibility and enlightenments within the individual. And so when one of the questions becomes, hey, my question is, here's how my partner's behaving, and then I'm behaving this way in response. In other words, he's making me feel this way, or he's making me this way, which I know you're not saying that. I'm just pointing out the subtle implication. Then we scratch the record, interrupt the pattern, and go, wait a minute. I can't actually ask a question about my partner's behavior. Like the true inquiry is, who do I need to be to bring out the best in myself and my partner? Like how, when my partner's in obsessive place, it's not, oh, do I give him space? Do I talk about it? What does he need? It's more like, who do I need to be? How do I need to show up at my best version of self? Because when I'm really vibrating in this place and he's in the lake or broke down or fallen, then it's like this, if I'm really in my heart and in my center, then what happens is I magnetically pull him up. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we can get into the intricacies of where, but you're basically abandoning your center. And in that center, there's a radiant, healthy feminine that you're not being, that you're like, oh, I'll go into the masculine, but where's the radiant, healthy feminine that I see on stage dancing and teaching a circle full of goddesses? It's like, that's the one we want to show up in, regardless of whether he's ready to resonate or not, because it may take a long time. He might be like, that really triggers me more. But if that's your best version, that's the direction.
And I want to mention too, just in the structure of things, it's super beautiful, that you're aware of this and you have this question about your relationship. And thank you for bringing it here. It would have fallen into the communications month, which is obvious, and that's actually the place where we do talk about masculine and feminine. One of the things that I was aware of, like with me and KamalaDevi, we've had, similar types of conflicts, in a big way for many, many years. And one of the things that helped me was recognizing that I could stay in a beautiful state. And this was some of the Tony Robbins teachings that we'd gotten. But staying in this beautiful state, despite how KamalaDevi was acting. And when I did that, then she started acting differently. And then we were able to dig down into the deeper levels of myself and where that, that conflict was. And so it kind of went in a circle back to myself, where, I don't have any responsibility. There's nothing I can do to change the way KamalaDevi is, but I can definitely change the way I am. And when I do that, then we respond to each other in a different way, and we can create a different type of future.
Yeah. And this is particularly hard in life partnerships or deep, primaries, where it's almost like a Velcro hook. Like and we'll give the example. I'll use Michael's wounded because it's so much easier. But Michael, when we're triggered, I go to depression, like despondency, hopelessness, and like really like it's not enough. And Michael, when triggered, goes to fear, like we're gonna break up, or like goes into kind of a like almost like a terror, in extreme senses. Now his terror activates my despondency. My despondency activates his fear, right? So now we're in this downward cycle. And when we really have a deep understanding of what each other's wounds are and patterns are, we can like really just be like, oh wait, I need to break the cycle and not get hooked in. So it's like, we're going to actually start upward spiral by it's really kind of rewriting. It doesn't happen just like this. Like, yes, we can give you a great answer to the question, but it's a deep practice that has to come over, months and months of working on changing your response.
Yeah. And I wanted to say something on that although we can analytically look at it and say, oh yeah, this is what's happening. This is happening because of this and that. That's all of the analytical mind. But the way it actually happened with us was much easier. All we had to do was work on ourselves. And I talk about this staying in a beautiful state. That was just some of the work that I had done. But most of the work is actually shamanic work, where we would just give it to spirit. And we're going to be teaching those tools, here as well, because that's our main emphasis. But you don't have to do it all yourself. You don't have to figure all this shit out yourself. All you have to do is give it to God. And there are ways of doing that, and in the spiritual and the shamanic work, and then it all falls into place. Like even in our relationship, we were blindsided by the peace that came in our relationship. It was this past fall, we were in Israel, and we're like, holy crap, we're suddenly in this place of peace, and we didn't really know how we got there. So we went back and reverse engineered and figured out that we were doing all of this spiritual work with Ista. We were doing all of this, deep emotional work with Tony Robbins and all of this work. But we weren't specifically working on that issue, of the masculine, feminine, these little details. They all kind of washed out naturally just because we did that deeper work. So,
and with, whether or not you do this course with us, I think Michael's point's really beautiful. Like when it's one of those deep karmic patterns and you find yourself stuck in this like loop and you're hooked into it, to really get that there's a lot like an alcoholic who would say, like, I can't, I'm addicted to drama. I'm a theater director. I was addicted to drama for many, many years. It's like, I can't quit drama, but there's a power within that can. And when I pray and ask for, magic, ask for support, ask for guidance, ask for just a miracle. And I'm sincere in that. Like, there is another whole level, because the solution to the problem, as Einstein would say, is not at the frequency in which the problem was created, right? So we need to actually pop into deep inner peace in order to have that problem dissolve. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Ronya.
Yeah, thank you, Ronya. Excellent, beautiful question. Did you want to jump into
the next, spiritual? I just want to see if there's any spiritual questions after conflict resolution and communication. That's next month. And I want to just run through and see
if anybody has anything.
Yeah. And before going to that, if there's another question on realistically time-wise, you've heard all the categories. If you came here with a question, let's hear from the people that are on the call, and we'll just tell you which month it would be answered in. So I've got Marina just unmuted.
Yeah.
Great.
You have a question?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's gonna maybe touch on Ranya's question a little bit. My question was about communicating clearly our needs. So knowing what our needs are and like super clear communication, and this is what's needed, and like no extra explanation, no particular reason what, but without any guilt or anything like, you know, or any compromise, meeting somewhere halfway, like just communicating clearly the need.
Excellent.
Yeah. And the question, what is, like, how do you do that? Is that the question?
I guess, how do you do it without thinking about like compromising or any guilt around that?
Mm-hmm.
And just saying exactly what I need.
Great. Okay. So this is definitely in the communication area, and in the intellectual, you know, kind of around agreements. One of the things that comes up for me, you know, we're polyamorous, and so we have a lot of agreements about, you know, who can do what with who, and you know, all of these different things that give us emotional safety. The base thing is that we agree to have agreements of a certain level, and that's the cat's showing up over here, and I just wanted to keep him out of our.
The last time Kabuki made an appearance, I was like, I'm getting jealous because he's getting so much attention. So I just wanted to name it and then let it go.
Okay, let him go. He'll be back. He jumps back. So the principle that has worked for us, you know, again, we're looking back at it. You know, we've done lots of things wrong, you know, over the years as well. But the agreements, it's agreeing to communicate at a certain level, and then I don't feel guilt about it. If I know that I'm, you know, like if we have an agreement that I will tell KamalaDevi if I have sex with someone. Then, but I don't have an agreement that I'm going to, you know, tell her, you know, before I have sex. Then I don't have any guilt when I do tell her about it. I don't have guilt because that's the agreement, right? If it's not clear what the agreement is, then I can have some guilt about it. So it's important to have agreements that are really well defined, and we still, you know, end up walking over those agreements at different times and breaking people's boundaries that we didn't know that they didn't know that they had, so they hadn't put them in place. But it's a matter of communicating.
And when we break those boundaries and we go into a breakdown because it's like, I didn't even know, I'm not psychic. That's fucking golden. Like, oh, I set off a tripwire. Now that tripwire, I'm not going to set it off again. I'm going to actually pay attention to where that is, what that means, what agreement can we make so that we're not tripping that up again, so we're not in a constant, you know, spiral of pattern. So there's actually a real responsibility in a conscious relationship to say, if there's a breakdown, I'm really listening and I'm really upgrading so that this is not a pattern. Like Michael and I are not interested in perpetuating patterns. Should something arise, let's deal with it fully and totally in such a way that you know, it's like walking down that street and you fall in a hole, walk in and you trip. And it's like, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested in walking down a different street next time.
So this is, it's kind of present for me. You know, I had a date last night with a new girlfriend, a girlfriend of mine. And the night before, she'd had a date with another, you know, person. She'd had a new experience, you know, in her life, you know, a beautiful new sexual experience. And so she was feeling guilty. You know, we were walking down to dinner, and she's, you know, she was like, okay, you know, how much can I tell you? And I, you know, normalized it that she could tell me as much as she wanted, that I didn't need it, but I was completely okay with her telling me. And then when she told me these things that were kind of vulnerable, you know, about her date with these other couple of guys, actually, but when she told me about this experience that she had, she was then able, I was then able to really tell her, hey, I am so happy that you told me about this. Not only am I okay with it, I'm beyond okay. I'm actually happy that you told me about the details of it, because I'm happy for you. And what that did was it made it possible for her now to not have any guilt about telling me, oh yeah, I had this experience with this other person. So I'm building those patterns of it being okay with her, so that she doesn't have those guilt. And that's the type of agreements, you know, rewarding the other people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, the moral of this is that we're going to use a lot of positive psychology, a lot of reward and reinforcement for the behaviors that we really want to enhance and water in our partners. And, you know, Michael gave a very extreme example of someone who's very compulsive and very experienced, and, you know, and not all of us are there. And then, you know, on the other side of things, what if, you know, there's some things I don't want to hear? What if it's like, oh, that's really uncomfortable? Like, I'm not going to just reward him for telling me, because then he'll keep telling me and it's going to hurt. It is, there's an art to finding the true line of how do we, in addition to, you know, ask for what we really need and be really clear about that, but how do we actually also let people know what our boundaries are and not feel guilty about that either, you know? And that art, you're doing a dance, so you have to, you know, step on each other's toes a few times to get the dance steps down, but it is work that we want to do.
Yeah. And when we were at ISTA in Hawaii last week, I came to some conclusions about myself along these lines, that in the past I've often been too forward in what I say without getting permission from the other person. And I actually associate it as a type of energetic penetration, where I'm saying things, you know, to someone that I don't have the agreement, you know, that it actually causes some shock for their system for me to say those things, you know, so it goes beyond, you know, just the agreements of what we say and what we don't say,
but how we say
it, and what type of energetic connection we have with that person. And it's so beautiful with this group, because we're working with people who are in committed relationships, so we can really get down to those subtle levels and just get past these, you tell me at 11 o'clock if you know, before you kiss somebody, blah blah blah. We're getting down to those energetic levels, you know, much deeper.
Yeah. And I will, you know, since we're going into the intellectual realm of like agreements, since we're talking about this, I want to say that one of the reasons that agreements really fail, and people, you know, it's almost like you see people setting rules in the relationship because they're testing their partners. You know, they're almost setting traps for each other. And I think that subconsciously, sometimes when we set rules, it's a type of a test. If he really loved me, then he would this or that. And what we're not interested in those personality games. We're not interested in the ego, you know, justification of trying to prove whether the love is enough. What we're truly interested in is the soul values, and our agreements. We want them to come from, you know, the true nature of who we are and what life's about for us and what we are here for. And when we get down to the deep values and then we build agreements on that, it's a pleasure, it's a joy, it's a whole different experience than I'm limiting somebody's, you know, people don't feel limited. They feel like, oh, I'm co-creating, you know, a value-based lifestyle. And so I am honoring this agreement because we're co-creating that together. It's like a complete, you know, paradigm shift.
Nice. Do we have any other questions? There is a question that I would like to answer here, unless somebody who's online right now has something else. We good there? Okay, so one of the questions that came in, I won't say who it is because I didn't get permission for it being non-anonymous, but was basically about resentments. And so these are resentments, and I was particularly attracted to this one because I've had many resentments in our relationship that I've held on to for, 10, 15 years. And
let me ask the question, you can answer it.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, go ahead.
So I know when we get hurt, we are working through our own feelings and the insecurities. We may be emotional, in pain or upset, and that can fester. And the other person may not seem to empathize as much as we need, or may be consumed with the fear that we don't see the other caring. And resentments can happen if not totally worked through. I think this happened to me and my partner, and we didn't make it through. It was because I couldn't heal from what felt like betrayal and apathy. All the while, my values say to not have these kinds of resentments. So essentially, how do you guys work through these human conditions?
Okay. It comes back to that question of the resentment is towards somebody else, right? In this situation, and if one of the surface ways of taking care of it is to give the benefit of the doubt to the other person. It's kind of when someone does something that you resent, it's interpreting it. Like, for instance, if KamalaDevi is angry at me, this is one of our patterns, for a long time. I started shifting that to okay, she's not angry at me. She's actually, scared because of, the abuse that she had when she was a child. And so I'm shifting that. And so it doesn't lay down into my consciousness as a resentment. That's on the front level. But we can also go into the existing resentments that we have and repattern them. And that would be a matter of, again, it's not something that has to happen layer by layer, like with a therapist sitting on the, laying on the couch and opening all this stuff up. And, that's the therapy model. And I think that it's much easier to do the spiritual model where we're asking spirit to help us and to go into that work. By doing the work on ourselves, we end up not having those resentments. That was my experience. And so all of this, I had this huge file folder of resentments for KamalaDevi, that was in there for the past 15 years. I could, if I wanted to, I could go back and I could totally blast our relationship and say, there's no way that I can make this work. I'm going to have to divorce her. But when I started doing that work and we got to harmony, suddenly those resentments, I don't even really remember what they were. It's kind of like you have a fight and afterwards you remember the feelings of how bad the fight was. You don't even remember what you were fighting about. Right. And that's the way I've adjusted to the resentments that I have in our relationship. They've just kind of gone away because of the harmony on the other side. The person who asked this question is talking. It's a sad story that she wasn't able to overcome that and did have that split. We almost had that, KamalaDevi and I, but we did overcome it, and that's how we did it. Is just by having our harmony level.
I look at resentment, like the metaphor that I use is like corrode. Like if there's a channel between us, like a heart channel, and it's open, there's a big flow of love. And resentment's kind of like corrosion that blocks the channel. It kind of it starts to cholesterol in a vein or something, and it builds up until pretty much it squeezes the love. And when there's cholesterol, it's like it's dangerous. It's an unhealthy thing. You could have a heart attack. The whole channel could completely break. And the medicine, to clear through that is actually the frequency of forgiveness. And forgiveness, you know, if we geek out about it and we break it down, forgive is to give before in the future. And Michael talks about giving the benefit of the doubt. You know, this is what we're doing, is we're actually not anticipating that, oh, my past pains, not putting that in the future and just like seeing that person that way, but we actually clear out that old stuff and we give them permission to show up differently, or we give ourselves permission to show up in a way that co-creates something else. But this, having our thumb on the pulse of our resentment is really valuable. And it's a response. It's my job to go, oh, I'm holding on to resentments. I'm clogging my arteries. Like, I'm the one who's going to have a heart attack here. Like, I need to clear that. I need to forgive that. I need to start doing more gratitude, change my focus onto what my partner's doing right, and change my feelings, you know, and the meaning that I make of it, as opposed to, because what happens ironically is that resentments become such a filter for how someone is showing up that they inevitably, it's almost like a self-sabotaging thing where they inevitably keep showing up in that way because that's all we're holding on to.
And it's real. Once you get to that you know, place of, you know, giving the benefit of the doubt to the partner, suddenly harmony just comes. You know, that it just came. It was like a flash flood that just came over our relationship, and it was beautiful. I'm going to say something that's very controversial.
And we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. So I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to drop a bomb that's going to be very controversial. Dieter Doom and Tamara and Zeg over in Germany and Portugal, they have this thing that they say in the community, which is that there's no place in relationship for jealousy. Right. And we've been working on
the quote is specifically that jealousy doesn't belong to love.
Doesn't belong to love. Exactly. So I'm going to say, and we've, you know, kind of debated this, and we'll talk a lot about jealousy, you know, in the further work, but I want to put something out there that, so say the quote again, and I'll say my quote.
The jealousy doesn't belong to love.
Jealousy doesn't belong to love. I'm going to say that conflict doesn't belong to love, and conflict is actually not necessary. And I'll put that out there. It really is possible to not have conflict in relationship. It's a kind of a bigger picture, but it's possible to not have that conflict. There is no place for it within love. Conflict is a thing that happens within the animal world, you know, because there's prey and predator and, you know, all of these things. And, you know, all of this stuff, the emotions that we're feeling about fight and flight, that's all coming from a past history that, you know, there is no real risk within a relationship. There doesn't have to be that conflict. Once we realize and we get our, you know, our bodies and our spirit into this place where we realize, you know, where it's actually feeling safe, then it's all about expression of love. And that conflict, it doesn't have to be there. It's a filter.
And I'll give a testimonial of this, which happened actually in I think the 13th year of our marriage. I was like, all right, no, it was actually, the 5th year of our marriage. My ovaries were ready to pop an egg and make a baby. And I was like, I'm ready for a baby. And Michael was like, I don't think we're ready. We're fighting way too much. We were in constant conflict. And he's like, I can't see bringing a child into the world under these conditions. And he made a great agreement. We actually had like this soul contract. He said, if we can maintain harmony for a year, if we can stop fighting, then I'd be willing to consider having a child with you. And, you know, I am like a fiery Latina, like the idea of not having a fight for a year was just like so foreign. And I went to my guru at the time and, you know, really humbly was like, am I going to have to break up with my partner? Because I need to find a baby daddy. And she said, this is your deepest spiritual discipline. What an exquisite opportunity for you to agree for the next year, to make a commitment to agree. And I'm like, wait, don't you mean agree to disagree? Like what, what? And she said, no, she said, your work is that whatever he shares that arises for you as fuel to, in conflict and like kind of wants to ignite your fire, like look at it like, hey, how can I actually fully put myself in his shoes, see through the world through his eyes, and understand that like I may not from my perspective agree with him, but from his perspective, that I can agree with him. And it was an enlightening practice. And I'm glad we're closing on this note, because it was a full year of peace. And then Michael, the moral of the story is he was like, okay, I'm ready to have a baby with you.
and I got her pregnant right away, because we hadn't had sex like that in a year. So I had all that pressure built up.
I think he's joking on that part. It didn't take us. It took us 4 months, but he was willing to have a baby. And then we had other related problems that came up, and I think I dropped that teaching and I'm picking that teaching back up right now.
Yeah, and you guys will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We have fallbacks. That's why we have a whole month on conflict resolution, because there will be conflict, and we understand that. But the future vision is that you can actually get to a place where it doesn't.
Yeah,
it isn't anymore. It's real.
So we look forward to sharing those tools with you and much, much more. And if you're resonating with these teachings and you want to go deeper, then let's set up a discovery call. And, and specifically with the discovery call, I realized after we've had a few of them, we currently have 2 couples that are in the journey, and we're wanting to get 12. And I thought I'd sweeten the offering a bonus. I was like, oh, I just thought this morning, anyone who signs up can also, as a free bonus, get my Beyond Monogamy course, which is 9 extraordinary weeks of poly stuff. Since we're not teaching poly here, I'm happy to gift that. So I know Greg and Marina, you guys will be excited to get the Beyond Monogamy
yeah,
course.
I see that thumbs up.
Yeah, but the discovery calls really is more about, is this the best time for you to invest in this course? Is this the best time? Is this the best use? Because it's a massive investment of energy and attention and also, if it's financial investment, and does it make sense in your life, because it's a massive commitment, and we want to make sure that you're all the way up, all the way down, a hell yes to doing it. So let's have that conversation to figure that out if you're feeling resonant. But you're welcome to send us more questions, because we are going to do another Q&A in 2 weeks, and we'd love to just continue the conversation with you.
Yeah, keep sending the questions over. Thank you for the beautiful questions that you guys did ask, and we look forward to moving forward with you into this evolutionary, relationship space. We are looking at you as our family. You are our community that we want to, take forward. So,
blessings.
Namaste.
I'm going to unmute you so I can hear you saying bye. Or you can unmute yourself if you want to say bye. Blessings.
Say bye.
Blessings.
Bye.
Bye. Love you guys.
Thank you. Great call.
Thank you.